Hello and welcome back to this course series. In our previous video, we were able to finish with our list data structure. Now, in this video, we are going to be working with the tuple data structure. So what is a tuple? So just like a list, a tuple is also a collection of data, but this time around, it is immutable. In the case of the list data structure, we mentioned that a list object is mutable. That means you can remove items from the list, you can add items to the list, you can update the list, you can modify the list, right? But in the case of a tuple, it is important to note that when you create a tuple, the value of that tuple is constant, right? It cannot be modified. You cannot add items to a tuple, you cannot delete items from a tuple, right? The only way you can make changes to the tuple is like to go to that place of assignment and change the content, but you cannot use methods like append or delete or clear, right, to manipulate your tuple data. So now, why do we now need a tuple when we already have a list? Well, probably the inventor of Python was able to figure out that since a list object is mutable and you can reassign a list object, there could be an issue or a scenario in a large program when you have already set a list data and by accident you could reassign sensitive information and it will cause a problem. So in a situation like that, when you probably have to like add some certain information in your program, you are probably going to use a tuple, and by so doing, those settings are there, they are constant, right? It is only when you go there to the place of assignment and modify those settings manually, that is the only way you can change the content of that tuple object, right? So this is a basic explanation of what a tuple is and the perfect use case of one. So now, how do we create a tuple? If you want to create a tuple, first of all, by default, any variable that you create and they are separated with commas, it is by default a tuple. So for instance, I create an s variable and I assign it to 1, 2, and 3. So and I want to print the type of s. So let's save this and run it, and it says tuple, right? So by default, you just create an object without enclosing them in any parentheses and they are separated by comma. By default, Python assign them to a tuple object. Then if I want to print this s directly and I run this, so you can see now that this s is now enclosed in a bracket. So if by default, if you want to be explicit that you are creating a tuple, what you want to do is that you are going to enclose this in a parenthesis. So I am going to clear this output. And if you print s again, s is still enclosed in parenthesis. So now, a very important note. If I create this object, this s object, and I enclose it in parentheses, right? And I just add one item to this s object without adding any other item. I just add one item here without adding a comma, and I save this and run. So I'm going to run this now. Now we just have one as an integer. It's no longer coming in a bracket. So and if I print the type of s now, let's go down. We know that it is seeing this one here as an integer, no longer as a tuple. But you will ask me why? Because this one is enclosed in a parenthesis, in a bracket. Now, the reason is because in Python also, we use this type of bracket like to group objects. If there is no comma in that your parenthesis, your program is going to see that variable or that object as just a grouped object. Now I'm going to save and run, and now we have our tuple back. So that is a basic way of declaring a tuple. Another way we can also declare a tuple is by using the tuple constructor. So assuming I have a list of 1, 2, and 3, and I want to convert it. So you know that when we have this square bracket, it is a list. So if I'm to save this and run, so Python says that presently this object is a list. So but if I want to use a tuple constructor here and I run, now this object has become a tuple. It is no longer a list. So even though we have one item here and there is no comma, because a list itself is an item, So what is going to happen now is that we are going to print this S directly instead of the type of S. So, and let's save and run. Now we have the value just like we had it initially. So I hope you understand very well how to create a tuple object. So now, like I said, you cannot insert any object inside inside a tuple object. You cannot delete an item inside a tuple object. Now, so we know that this is already a tuple, and just like the other data types that we have been seeing, we can actually index this tuple. Okay, so we can do indexing and slicing of this tuple. But then, if for any reason you want to probably use like delete or append method on this index. So let me say I want to call this del function delete. So, and I'm going to say s, and then I'll pass in the index of 0. That is the first item here, and I will save. So now we said that tuple object doesn't support item deletion. So, but assuming I remove this tuple constructor on this, and remember that at this point this s is a list, so I'm going to clear this output and I'll save it. So now the first index of this object s has been deleted. So this is like a demonstration of the fact that tuple objects cannot be muted. You can't delete, you cannot add an object. So now let's say for instance you have like a list inside your tuple. So just like I stated earlier in this video, a tuple object can hold a list. A list object can hold a tuple or a dictionary. So these data structures can have other data structure as an item, and they will be accessed as one index. So I'm going to remove this square bracket and I will replace it with a normal braces. So this is the second index here. And for the third index, I'm going to pass in a list. So here, this is the third index. So I'm going to pass in a list of probably 4 and 5. So I'm going to try to access the third index. So this is index 0, the one is index 0, 2 is index 1, and 3 is index 2. So this entire list is index 3, right? So if I want to access this index 3, so I can say that Python, can you help me print the index 3 member of this X? So let's save it and see what Python will give us. So it gives us this list item. So now that we have a list that is mutable inside a tuple that is not mutable, you can, since we know that we can access this item here, which is the third index, and we access the third index, and inside that third index, we're accessing the first index of that third index, and we are going to delete it. So we are going to call the delete function on that. So here I'm going for the X. So now we are in S, and in that S, we are going for the third index. And the third index of that X, we are going for the first index of that third index. I hope you are understanding this. So we can clear our output, and instead of printing this, we do not, we can now print S again so that we now know the current value of X. So now we have the index 1 deleted. That is because here 4 is index 0 and 5 is index 1. I hope this is making sense. So we can say that on this third index, we want to append something on it. So remember that right now I'm calling the third index. So I'm going to write dot append. You can see that I have the dot append. All the list methods are already available for me to use. So I believe we have seen all of this method in our previous video, right? So I'm going to say dot append. I will now pass in the number or the value that I want to append. So I can pass in a string. I can say, well, I can pass in hello, and I will save, run, and let's see the value of S. So now hello is now part of what we have in this list. So when you have a list in a tuple or another data type, maybe like a dictionary in a tuple, well, you can still perform those unique methods that you have on them. But this method, I did not call it, remember, on this tuple. I only called it on the list member of that tuple. So this is just a basic explanation of how to manipulate the list data. So in our next video, we are going to be looking at the unique methods that are used on a tuple object. So thank you so much for watching this video. See you in the next one.